Good morning, good afternoon. Thanks everyone for joining us, taking the time out of your day to be here with us. This is our monthly Detect to Protect webinar series. It takes place on the third Thursday of each month. And really the goal of the webinar is to help security teams learn how to better protect their networks from unknown threats. So my name is Kim Schofield from Stamus Networks. I'll be hosting the webinar this morning and managing any questions at the conclusion of the call. We are going to have a few poll questions during the webinar, so we'd love to hear your feedback on those if you take a minute to answer those. So today's session is going to be presented by Phil Owens. He is our Vice President of Customer Solutions. And just a reminder, today's webinar is being recorded. We will send a link of the recording as well as slides and a white paper. We'll send those out via email to you early next week. If you do have any questions during the webinar, we would ask that you please wait until the end of the presentation and just type those into the chat or Q&A window. And with that, I'm going to hand the microphone over to Phil.
Hey, thanks, Kim. And thanks to everyone who has joined us today. We'll jump right into why we're here. Basically, talking about weak attack signals that your IDS might miss or will miss. So a legacy intrusion detection system, or IDS, can be effective at making signature-based detections and spotting explicit attack signals. But what happens when the attack signal is weak, low amplitude, sorry, just low and subtle? These indicators can easily be missed by a typical IDS. This is because the IDS lacks the fundamental capabilities to analyze these types of activity. Any threat that sneaks past your legacy IDS leaves your organization open to risk. So employing more advanced detection methods and identifying them is vital to the safety of the organization. So don't be fooled, right, by the weakness or the subtlety of these attack signals, because their impact can be anything but weak or subtle to your organization. Now, don't worry, this webinar is not going to be a product pitch, but my marketing and sales teams would be upset if I didn't at least introduce you to Stamus Networks. So some of you here may already know who we are, and that's great. But for those of you who don't, Stamus Networks is a global provider of high-performance network-based threat detection and response systems that help your security teams know more, respond sooner, and mitigate risks with insights gathered from cloud and on-premise network activity. Our Stamus security platform combines the best of intrusion detection systems, or IDS, network security monitor, NSM, as well as network detection and response, NDR. So I said those with acronyms because I may use those acronyms later in the presentation. So just wanted to make sure everyone was on the same page. We put all of this into a single solution that exposes serious and imminent threats to critical assets and empowers rapid response. Our team has been working with Seracata since its inception, and that is part of the base of the solution. And they've been involved in the transformation from just an alert-driven IDS to a full-blown network security monitoring system with IDS capabilities. We've applied this expertise to optimize our network detection and response solution, which is built on top of a foundation of Seracata, as I'd mentioned. We have a number of people on our team that are actively involved with the coding and QA, as well as management of the Seracata project. What this means is that Stamus Networks has made 10 times more code contributions than any other commercial organization in the world to the Seracata project. So analysts have been telling us for years, right, that IDS is dead. But because you're here is proof that that's not entirely true. The Stamus security platform takes legacy IDS and enhances it by adding NSM and NDR capability on top. Our Stamus security platform combines the best of intrusion detection systems, network security monitoring, network detection and response into that single solution, as I had mentioned. With all of that said, I will point out that the Stamus security platform will be able to help in identifying some of the signals that we're going to discuss today. So that's my shameless plug for the day. So I'm going to be done with that, and we're going to jump right into weak attack signals, right, that your legacy IDS will miss. So today we're going to talk about 4 different subtle or weak attack signals that are commonly missed, and we will describe the ways that these attack signals can be detected effectively. So let's review these 4 signals and learn why the IDS will have difficulty detecting them, and highlight some ways that they can be effectively detected in your network. So in this talk, we'll explore these 4 types of attack signals, and these are homoglyphs. You'll hear me also maybe call them homographs, and some of you may know them that way. Anomalous network activity, malware beaconing, and unauthorized user activity. For most of these, we'll describe, or actually for each of these, we'll describe what they are, why they matter, why your legacy IDS will miss them, and finally look into mechanisms used by a modern IDS to and alternatives like NDR to help detect them. So with that said, Kim mentioned that there would be some polls, so I'm going to put the first poll up on the screen. And this poll is, does your organization currently use an IDS IPS? And we have 3 yeses here. Either it's standalone, it is an IDS IPS, or you're not sure. Depending on where you work, you may not actually know. And then the last one there is D, that you don't have one. So I'll give a couple minutes and we can wait for responses.
Yep, we have the poll up on the screen, so all the attendees should be able to see that, and you can go ahead and just make your selection. Let's see, I see a few people that have answered, but there's definitely more out there. All right, might be ready, Phil.
All right, cool.
I'll go ahead and end the poll.
All right, so we have the majority of folks are saying yes, standalone IDS is what they're currently using. We did have a couple people say they weren't sure what it was that was being used, but it seems that everybody here has an IDS. So that's good, because we're talking about that. So I would have figured that would be the answer. So thank you very much. So let's start in with these weak attack signals, right? First, we're going to talk about homoglyphs. Like I'd mentioned before, these are also called homographs in certain areas. So with that said, a homoglyph, they're common methods, right, of deception, primarily used in phishing attempts, as you can see. And in this type of attack, the attacker will disguise their malicious domain, their URL, or even possibly their TLS certificate by using characters that appear identical to those that are used by the spoofed domain, URL or TLS server name indication, or SNI. This, as you can see on the screen here, you can't really tell the difference between the actual letters on the screen, but the code or the Unicode that is associated with these letters are completely different. So when they are actually processed by the web browser, this could be used for email attacks as well. When they're processed by the email server, they may take you to someplace completely different, even though they look exactly the same. So why is it that that an IDS, a typical IDS, is going to miss these, right? To understand why, we have to understand how an IDS works. An IDS uses a signature-based detection mechanism, right, to compare a stream of packets or network sessions to an explicit rule. To trigger an alert, the IDS must see a match between the network traffic and the predefined indicator of compromise, right, known as malicious IP address or untrusted domain names or any other explicitly identifiable characteristic. While technically speaking, rules could be written to detect certain commonly known instances of domain spoofing homoglyphs, it is impractical to assume that a rule could be written for every possible instance of a homoglyph usage. So if it was even possible to write that nearly infinite number of rules, the IDS would still fail to be capable of storing that many rules and effectively checking the traffic against them, especially in a high-speed environment, right? So that this is what we're talking about here. The potentially infinite number of combinations that can be utilized for creating a domain name, utilizing a homoglyph technique and different Unicodes for those characters. So what can we do about them? Homoglyph detection, it requires advanced functionality and that the IDS just simply doesn't process, right? Advanced logic, stateful logic, and Unicode decoding. In this method, there must be a database of commonly spoofed domain. That database could be similar to the Alexa Top 100 domains, and paired with a list of custom domains, right? Maybe specifically to your organization, your domain names and things like that could be added to that list of commonly spoofed domains. And then when the traffic moves through the network, it is checked against this list for similarity, and an alert is triggered if the estimated similarity is below a given threshold. So essentially, known and trusted domains are defined, and then the engine is used to perform computational logic, which compares the domains seen in incoming traffic with the known, trusted, or regularly spoofed domains. So like Google or Apple or Facebook that could be spoofed, right? This analysis must be conducted by a post-processing engine by dedicating computing power to the inspection of the key pieces of metadata, like the URLs, like the domain names, the TLS SNIs, even the TLS certificate information could be part of that. The logic engine can analyze the Unicodes present in the serving domain and trigger alerts as needed. By using post-processing to do Unicode decoding and data analysis, the detection engine does not need to store countless rules the way a standard IDS would. Another way that you could actually utilize this is, or do some detection of this, could be with anomaly type of detection as well. So maybe you've never gone to this website before, because we know that because of this Unicode detection, right? All right, so that was the first one, homoglyphs. The second one, weak attack signals that might be missed are unauthorized user activities. So sometimes this is also referred to as policy violations. And unauthorized user activity can include many different types of activity. And it doesn't necessarily need to be malicious. Essentially, any type of activity that isn't explicitly approved by the organization's security team or IT department can be considered unauthorized. This can vary across the organization. And within this umbrella, we have shadow IT, the use of unapproved software, systems, devices, and things like that. Policy violation, where a user breaks a defined rule, or maybe a tool is misconfigured. So that policy violation isn't necessarily the user itself, but the tool or the way the tool was configured might be breaking some type of policy. Not every instance of unauthorized activity is intentional or malicious, right? In some cases, the user is just trying to increase their productivity, but because the systems that are being used are unapproved, its usage patterns may not be monitored. So in other cases, a violation of policy could signal the presence of a malware actor who is taking control of a user account, and the user is completely unaware that their credentials are being used. Regardless of the context, it is important that security teams maintain visibility into their activity so they can quickly investigate suspicious activity. So now that we're talking about unauthorized user activity, I have my second poll, right? How important is it to you to detect this unauthorized user activity? So we'll let Kim put this poll up on the screen and give it a few seconds so that we can get some responses. And then I'll move next to why the IDS is going to miss some of this.
And I just wanted to note too, I did see a question come in, so we'll take that at the end of the webinar. So just wanted to acknowledge that I did see that. All right, we'll give this a few more seconds, but I think we only have one answer, Phil.
Okay.
I'll let you see what that is. You may not be surprised.
Extremely important. Extremely important. Yes, of course. All right. With that, let's move on. So, why the IDS might miss this, right? IDS detection, as mentioned before, relies largely on signature-based mechanisms. So, by comparing packets and network sessions to the network, on the network to a library of explicit rules, the IDS can generate alerts when traffic matches a known attack signature. Unfortunately, this type of detection doesn't help uncover unauthorized access or user activity that must be detected by monitoring host activities and actively hunting for your own violations. Organizations should establish a baseline for which is authorized and which is not, right? However, the responsibility for monitoring user activity and auditing these policies often falls on the security team. An IDS alone cannot maintain the host state needed to view the relevant data, which compromises user history and activity. And because a lot of these things could be tools that are actually utilized within your organization, but utilized in a way that may not be or may be harmful, right? Especially if a malicious actor gets in place. Having the rest of the network security monitoring data around any events or alerts that may have fired from an IDS can help in identifying what's going on. So typically, some type of hunting activity is needed. Also, what I want to point out is a lot of newer tools will have a guided threat hunting authorization. So moving on how we can do this, right? How you're actually able to detect this type of attack. There's integrated hunting tools in more modern systems like an NDR. Right? They can mitigate the amount of work an analyst would need to do, to identify unauthorized user activity, by providing a panel of insights. And again, this goes back to the added metadata from an NSM type of solution to be able to go through that panel of insights to look for violations in policy. One of the most effective ways to deal with this is with a proactive threat hunting. And while a legacy IDS system may generate most of the data needed, having that NSM data is really going to be key. There is not typically an automated process to trigger alerts on user activity. And it's typically recommended that a proactive approach to finding this is what's needed. For example, your organization might not authorize users to run HTTPS proxy applications in their environment. So in order to locate any instance of this, you could use a network-based threat hunting tool that provides a query for this specific type of activity. In turn, you can review those incidents and where the user and activity is originating from. From there, you may further investigate the user, see why they're doing it, stop the activity, then even create a further automation, maybe triggering based off of what you're seeing, and add that data into a SOAR playbook to automate some of the notification and or stopping that activity. Unauthorized user activity, I just want to point out, and I think I mentioned this once before, doesn't necessarily signal the presence of a malware actor in the network, nor does it mean that your users are purposely trying to violate your policies, right? Typically, they're just looking to get some work done, and they found a tool that they like that is helping them do that. But by maintaining oversight into these instances is still incredibly important part of defending the organization. While this kind of activity does not always indicate that you are under attack, unauthorized user activity can definitely leave you very vulnerable. All right, next one that we have on the list is Malware Beacons. So we'll review this, why they matter, why the IDS might not detect them. So malware beaconing, just want to give you, what are they, right? Malware beaconing is when malware is communicating with a command and control server, asking for instructions or to exfiltrate collected data. on some predetermined asynchronous interval, right? Malware beaconing or command and control, also known as C2, server can host instructions, right, for the malware, which when they're executed on infected machines after the malware checks in, typically these beacons are done on a regular interval, but in more sophisticated examples, they may do these communications between seconds to days to try to avoid some of that detection. These communications are early warning signs of a possible larger attack. Sometimes all it takes is a beaconing signal to perform a distributed denial of service attack if those beacons are focused on a victim and there is enough infected machines, right? So why will an IDS miss it? As we said, intrusion detection systems perform threat detection by monitoring packets and network sessions and comparing them to that predetermined pattern. These signatures have to be configured, excuse me, a little dry mouth, have to be configured to specific data or patterns that are known threat signals or untrusted protocols. When an attack patterns are known and the rule can be written and added to the deployment, an IDS can detect access to known command and control servers, but these change so frequently that it is very difficult to keep up. And with more sophisticated threat actors, you may find that the command and control servers are infected infrastructure at a legitimate organization. When the C2 server has never been seen before, or the malware has already found access into the target system, the IDS has no way of detecting its presence. When this happens, the best way to locate and block, right, locate the threat and block the server's access is to identify the communication and then trace the source and destination. The main reason IDS cannot detect malware beaconing communications is most must be observed over time. So what can we do? The key here is to apply machine learning algorithms to identify suspected C2 beacons. Early detection is critical to thwart an attack. Machine learning-based detection system generates a confidence score, and that helps the security teams quickly assess the likelihood that a communication is a malware beacon based on several behavioral factors. The score is weighted, and prioritizing TLS servers exhibiting behavior patterns typically associated with beaconing traffic. In other words, communication with clear periodicity, even if that fluctuates, and specific packet profiles. Typically, beaconing is really tiny, maybe only send data and doesn't even wait to receive it. Those get highlighted by this mechanism. So a beacon score, right, can range anywhere from 0 to 100 with a higher score. With the higher score, possibility that the communication is a potential beacon. By investigating the assets impacted with these beacon profiles, a security practitioner can quickly identify common command and control servers based on an IP address or even a JA3S. So JA3S is a mechanism for hashing handshakes in a TLS session. And that is done, once that hash is created, this is going to be the server side of that hash to be able to identify the type of communication, things like certificates. And a lot of times you could have multiple IP addresses that are actually where the beacon is heading with the same JA3S. So there has started to be some JA3S indicators of compromise that are out there that you would be able to pull into an IDS to help with this as well. When an analyst confirms the presence of beaconing, the system, they can quickly investigate, right? Gather evidence and remediate the issue. All right, I think we're down to our final attack signal, and this is anomalous network activity, right? So that's what we'll be talking about here. Anomalous network activity is any change in the established standard of communications happening on the network, right? An anomaly could signal malware or another type of cyber attack. Further investigations could uncover network problems or equipment failures. Regardless, anomaly detection is important because it helps identify early attack signals that could be missed elsewhere, while also giving greater visibility into the health and efficiency of your network. Anomalous behavior has likely never been seen on the network. There are any number of behaviors that could be considered anomalous, and it just depends on the baseline that has been set for what is considered normal. Essentially, when something or someone on the network is not behaving in a way you would expect, it then that presence on the network is maybe something you've never seen before that should be considered an anomaly. So why might you miss this? Anomalous activity must be observed and tracked over time. Also, you have no way of really giving an IDS, a legacy IDS, no way to actually tell it what normal is. So it's going to be triggering alerts or its events based off of data, no matter what your normal looks like. I know that I have customers that might be working in a DevOps environment, and they see a lot of alerts that maybe a typical organization may not. And because of that, you're just not able to tune quite as well with a legacy IDS. So that's why they may miss some of this or give you false negatives, right? You must create a baseline, right? That's what I was mentioning. And anomaly detection requires details about each host, right? So this gives the whole idea of the state of the host that's really unavailable to an IDS. Activity monitoring requires metadata not observed and maintained on an IDS, such as protocol transactions, flow data, files, anything else that you would typically find in a NSM type of solution, but not necessarily the IDS, as it's just firing alerts. So what can we do here? Manually hunting, we've talked about this, right? A person can definitely, it definitely has the ability to find and spot anomalies, especially if they understand what the network looks like and how that how people should be utilizing the network infrastructure. Statistical algorithms, right? Outliers can be utilized to see things like a device that maybe typically is running maybe even an IoT device that is sending out on regular intervals or talking on regular intervals, and that pattern of communications is very observable, and then all of a sudden that pattern of communications changes, right? So statistical algorithms as well as unsupervised machine learning can be utilized in helping and identify this type of scenario. So I'm going to do our third audience poll, and this is, how important is it for you to identify anomalous activity on the network?
All right, the poll has been launched.
Excellent.
We'll give it a 30 or 45 seconds here for folks to answer the poll. We would love to see your feedback. Definitely encourage folks to answer. All right. Countdown is on. All right.
Click the button. There we go.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and end the poll. Thank you.
Excellent.
All right.
There we go. Slightly important and very important are where we're at on this one, as everybody can see. Should be seeing the results. All right. That's it from the four. What I'm going to do is talk to you a little bit about some of the resources that are available that we make available for you. Everybody here will receive a detailed white paper on the stuff that I've discussed here, as well as this slide deck and presentation will be available as well if you want to go back or send it off to your colleagues to take a look at. So that is going to be available and sent out to you. Also, some additional resources that we have available. There is a white paper for 5 essential requirements for network detection and response systems that you might be interested in, as well as data sheets on the Stamus security platform that we talked about in my shameless plug at the beginning. And we've actually literally written the book on Suricata for the Security Analyst Guide to Suricata. This book has had some really good uptake. I will tell you, it's right around 90 pages long, so pretty quick read, but some good information in there on rule creation, all kinds of stuff with regards to Suricata is available inside that book. That book is also open source, and it's available on GitHub, but we will send you a link so that you will be able to get access. Finally, we're going to jump into some Q&A for anybody that has actually sent anything. We will do that question and answer now. So, Kim, have you gotten any questions while I've been speaking?
Yes, I've gotten some questions through the entire webinar presentation. Thanks, Bill. So just a reminder for those of you who are on the call, if you'll just type your questions into the Q&A, you can also throw it into the chat window if you're more comfortable with that. All right, so I have a couple here. Let's start with the first one that I got pretty early on in your presentation when you were talking about homoglyphs. And so the example that you showed, the attendee is asking, doesn't the use of puny codes in modern browsers fix that problem?
Yeah, and the answer to that question is yes, it does. It does definitely help. And we use the homoglyph basically to. It was really simple for us to explain. Modern browsers are less susceptible to that exact attack. However, homoglyphs can be used in a lot of different things, right? You can actually utilize a homoglyph in a certificate, right? You can use a homoglyph in email addresses. So when these things are actually put up in front of a customer, or in front of a user, they really can't tell what it is they're looking at. So while web browsers may have solved this issue, if the mail to is bringing up Outlook or bringing up some other mail tool, that may not actually be able to handle this type of scenarios. So keep that in mind. And again, one of the reasons we looked at the homoglyph is it was really a simple example to explain. So thanks for that question. Great,
excellent. The second one I have here is that this person's IDS can detect clear text passwords. So is this really a unique case of unauthorized user activity?
So it's really awesome that the IDS can detect clear text passwords. I will tell you that the Stamus security platform and part of the IDS there can do that as well. And that's awesome. We have run into some IDSs that can't. We do have some security vendors that explain that AI is actually how they want to do detection of clear text passwords. And in our opinion, that's just a waste of processing power. Being consumed by an AI engine to be able to do that. The other thing that I want to point out from a clear text password perspective is while it could be unauthorized user activity, I have actually been in an environment where what was found in this was not necessarily unauthorized user activity, but not very well configured systems. So in an environment and where you have a tool that can detect clear text passwords, I was actually able to see all of the user's passwords because the proxy server that they had configured was sending all of its data from a Active Directory over to the proxy in clear text. And in that case, right, being able to find that before a possible malicious user on the network finds it is definitely a case of handling clear text passwords, right? So it may not be so much of an unauthorized user activity, but possibly a configuration issue that may be taking place.
Oh, that's good. That's a good point to bring up, that there is could potentially be another issue there, right?
Yep.
All right. So the last question that I have is that during the presentation, obviously we are implying that our product can detect these things, maybe that Legacy IDS can't. But are there any other examples you could share of shadow IT that your product could find?
Yeah, I mean, we as we mentioned in there, we were looking at HTTPS proxy servers. I mean, that's a really important one, but there's others that could be unapproved systems, either on-prem or in a public cloud to support skunkworks software development, as well as unauthorized SaaS applications, maybe abuse or misuse of file storage SaaS applications. Maybe you don't allow Google Drive because you're not in the Google ecosystem in your organization, or maybe Dropbox or Box for that matter, and being able to detect those types of things, right? In fact, we have done some blog articles dedicated to that on our website, and I'll make sure that the team, the marketing team here, as well, sends you those blog articles, links to those blog articles as part of that email follow-up that we talked about before. So, all right. So any other questions that we have?
That is all I had. We can give everyone a few seconds to type anything else in or ask any other questions. Again, just a reminder, we will be sending out an email early next week that will include the recording and the slides, that white paper that Phil mentioned. We can also include the links to some of the blog articles that we've written on the same topic. All right. Well, I am not seeing anything else come in. So Phil, thanks so much. Thank you to everyone who joined us this morning.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for reading off the questions and doing the poll. And thank you everyone for spending some time with us today, because I know time is very precious. So I do appreciate the time that was spent today.
Yeah, thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you.